Clip Notes is live. If you can't listen to every show, but you want to know who was on and what was said, you should sign up for Clip Notes. 1 paragraph summary, key moments in bullet point format with timestamps and 1 to 4 video clips from the show. Stay current, share insights with your team, and maintain your commitment to developing them during these extraordinary times. Sign up at any episode page on thisweekhealth.com, the website, or send a note to clipnotes, CLIPNOTES, at thisweekinhealthit.com, and it will kick off an automated workflow to get you signed up. Welcome to This Week in Health IT, where we amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. My name is Bill Russell, healthcare CIO coach and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts, videos, and collaboration events dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. This episode and every episode since we started the COVID-19 series has been sponsored by Sirius Healthcare. Now we are exiting the series, and Sirius has stepped up to be a weekly sponsor of the show through the end of the year. Special thanks to Sirius for supporting the show's efforts during the crisis and beyond. Today, we are joined by Judy Kirby, who is the CEO of Kirby Partners, which is an executive recruiting firm, really a retained search firm that places leaders in health IT and cybersecurity. I've known Judy for a long time. She has been doing this for a couple decades now, so she has great wisdom and insight into the process and what it takes to find the role you're looking for. So I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you enjoyed as well. Today, we're joined by Judy Kirby, CEO of Kirby Partners, an executive recruiting firm that specializes in leadership roles for healthcare IT and cybersecurity. And as is usually the case, Judy, the lawnmower is coming by my window right now as we start the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for having me.
You know, it never fails. It's like you start the podcast and they come by with the heavy machinery right outside your window. Where are you working? Are you in the office yet, or are you still working from home?
Actually, I have been working from the office virtually the entire time. We are in a 3-story office building, and right now there are only 2 offices where people are coming in. So it's been really great, and we distance ourselves in the office, which is one of the reasons I can't do a video today. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, people are looking at the best image we could find of you. That's what we're going to be superimposing here. What I wanted to do today is, for some people, this whole retained search thing is a mystery, and so I want to shed some light on that, and then some questions around that. I've gone through the process, and just some questions about gaps in time between things, how to get your resume ready, those kind of things. But also, just want to talk about. I've coached some people. This is a service you offer. You coach people. There's a lot of questions I think people have with regard to either getting ready for an interview, getting ready in their career for the next step, and those kind of things. So I just wanted to run through some of those things with you if you're ready to go.
Absolutely.
All right. So what does an executive search firm do? We'll start with the broad question.
Well, organizations hire us because they have a problem. And our goal is to solve their problem. And that problem really involves leadership in their technology or cybersecurity arenas. And we serve as a trusted advisor to really help them define and plan their hiring strategies for those critical roles. But most importantly, we listen and give counsel.
It's interesting. I've seen one of those, what do you guys call them? Like the job description, it's not a job description. It's like a binder that you give that talks about, the area and all those things. What do you guys call those things?
We call them white papers or position briefs.
The position briefs. And they're pretty extensive. I mean, you interview a lot of people to make sure that you can communicate in both directions. What do you usually put in one of those briefs?
We put in a lot about the organization. We do a lot with the area. Because it's not just the opportunity. It's normally, or at least in the past, about relocating, to be part of the team. Who knows what the future is going to bring around relocation in this crazy environment we're in right now. But it also talks about success factors, challenges, what they're really looking in that opportunity. And what we try to do is really dig deep. We were working with one organization and they were replacing a 20-year employee in their CIO role. And in the first site visit, they said, we want somebody just like that. But we ended up doing an assessment of what the organization felt they really needed the CEO turned 180 degrees on what he wanted. And it was amazing with a different CIO what IT has been able to do for the success of the organization. So helping organizations understand the impact the right person can have is a critical part of what we do.
Well, the location makes a huge difference. I've seen some searches you guys do for some pretty remote health systems, especially with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is sort of a different animal altogether in that the pool of resources is not as vast as people who generally want to be leaders within health IT. And then you have to find people who want to move to, I don't know, Myrtle Beach or something to that effect. I mean, that's a pretty challenging lift, isn't it?
It is, but everybody likes someplace different. There are people who say, find me something in New York City, and other people say, I'll never go to a city area. I want a small rural area. So every organization is different. Every person and their desires are different. So there's normally somebody for every position. We just have to get out there and find them.
So it's interesting. Let's talk about the process a little bit. I've seen you at HIMSS. I've seen you at Chime. You take an awful lot of meetings. I assume that's so that you know the people, so that when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, look, we need somebody for a rural location," you're like, "Hey, I know off the top of my head, I know a handful of people that are very interested in a rural location." I mean, how do you approach this? What does the process look like? I guess we'll start with, what's the process look like for you to get engaged with the health system, and then what's the process to find a pool of candidates?
Well, normally organizations will call us and several other firms and try to find the right partner for them that fits. And then we help them understand what success in this position is going to look like. Skills are the easy part. The real important part is finding an individual who will really mesh with their mission, their value, and the personality of the organization. And with that being said, we work with organizations to ensure that they're really considering a diverse slate of candidates so they can really benefit from the different perspective and experiences. Once we've got that defined, written the position brief, we get out there and recruit. And we look for those individuals, who are both qualified and interested. And we evaluate and screen them and narrow it to a slate of candidates so that we can present those who really closely fit with the organizational profile.
I'm sure there's listeners out there right now who are saying, why have I never gotten a phone call from you? I mean, I'm the next a good CIO for a health system. I'm in a number 2 position at a health system. Why are they not getting a call? How do they sort of get into that flow of communication to know about the next position and to be contacted when it becomes available?
Well, we do as much due diligence as we can, trying to find every individual out there in certain positions and meet them and know them. We don't know everybody. We try, and we'll keep going until we do. But obviously, there are some of us who work exclusively in healthcare, and if those individuals are looking for opportunities or just want to talk about their career, reach out to executive search firms, make that relationship, schedule some time to meet at Chime or HIMSS if we ever have those in person again. If not, reach out and just have a conversation with them, get to know them, and have them know you. That's the important part.
Yeah, at the Chime meeting, you generally have a breakout session that's available for people. And I attended one of those. It was really actually pretty fascinating because you guys really handled it well in terms of it was both allowing people who were more senior in that room to talk about how they progressed through their career and those kind of things. But then you had junior people in that room as well that you gave a voice to. How do you again? So Chime was an interesting one, and I think we will be meeting again next year, hopefully. I don't know about this year, but are there other ways that people get into that flow?
Absolutely. Just reach out and talk.
Just reach out. All right.
Yeah. Reach out through LinkedIn, call an organization, say, I just need some time. I want to talk. Most organizations are perfectly willing to spend the time getting to know you and giving you counsel.
Yeah, and you guys post on LinkedIn. I've seen your posts out there, so that's another way that people can just connect in. Let's talk about the resume a little bit. How important is the resume?
Bill, I would say that if you're good at what you do, you're not going to be looking for a job that often. So resume writing is not really a skill that most people use on a regular basis. And unfortunately, most people are never taught how to write a resume that's going to stand out and get them interviews. And arguably, this is probably the most important piece of paper you will ever own. And done right, it can open doors for you. Done wrong, and your resume will probably end up into the infamous HR black hole. And, for those that hire, think of all the horrible resumes you've had to call through where you normally take 40 to 30 seconds to scan it. And if nothing stands out or it's confusing and cluttered, you're done with it. And you may actually not get a position for which you'd be an amazing fit.
Yeah, I don't think I've written my resume has been done by somebody else. Probably, I think about 20 years ago was the last time I wrote a resume, and I found the process to be extremely valuable. And the process is essentially they're asking you about each one of your roles and your experience, and they're saying, what did you do? What was the value you brought to the organization? They were just asking me these questions, and it's interesting what they pulled out versus what I probably would have written on a piece of paper were very different. Why do you think that is?
Because they're looking at it from a different perspective than you are. You're so close to it. And when we help someone with a resume, we don't write it for them. We ask them the questions and we get them thinking about what they want to do next. I think that's the key is where do you want to go? And tailoring your resume to that next position and looking forward to what would an organization want to see that I've done and putting those things in. And I think one of the biggest things is individuals don't qualify. A lot of times their work session looks like they swallowed a job description rather than how well they do it. So if you've managed 50 people, that tells me nothing. Did you reduce turnover? Did you increase employee satisfaction? Did you encourage the team to grow and have people get master's degrees and get promoted? That's what makes you stand out. You're still saying the same thing. I managed a team of 50, but here's what I did with it rather than here's what it was. And that's a crucial part to making your resume stand out.
Well, it's mistakes people make. So in healthcare, it's interesting because you have very well-educated people. So they'll have papers they've written, they'll have places they've spoken, they'll have experience over the years. Do you have a rule of thumb for how long a resume should be? I've seen 8-page resumes.
I think our record was from a CMIO that was 35 pages. Our rule of thumb is try to fit it on 2 pages. What in technology, what you've done even 5 to 10 years ago becomes so irrelevant with the changes. Make them real short. You never want to leave anything off your resume of what you've done, but what you did there isn't as important as what you're doing now. Concentrate on your last, 5 to 10 years.
It was interesting. The questions to me is like, all right, what's the one statement about you? Okay, innovative CIO that leans into progressive ideas and delivers results for the organization. They say, great, all right, that's your phrase. If they don't care what your phrase is, that's your phrase. Great. Let's talk about your experience. And so as you're talking about your experience, everything should sort of demonstrate innovative CIO that leans into forward thinking that delivers results. It should communicate what you want to communicate. It's almost a sales document, isn't it? I mean, nobody looks at the resume and says, this is the person they're hired. They go, this is the person, put them in the pool of candidates. So it is almost a sales document that you don't get to really support. You don't get to talk through for the most part.
It is. And it has to stand by itself to get you to that next level with whomever, whether it's a executive search firm or whether it's, you're submitting it yourself. It has to stand on its own as showing value and showing intrigue of why they would want to talk to you and have you explain how you did what you did.
All right. So, do any of these creative, some people said, well, I send a video in, or I send a, infographic in, or I send does any of that stuff work, or not at the executive level?
I think it may work in some verticals. If you're in a very creative type of environment, yes, it may. If you're a Google, it may. Healthcare is very staid and tends to do the same things the same way. I'm not sure that it really works.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the interview process. You and I actually were talking a little bit about this before we got on the line. And I think people have a lot of questions about the interview process. There's the questions of what are people looking for, but is there a way I can prepare ahead of time for the interview? I mean, is there something like research that you tell people to do or to prepare? Do you tell them to, I don't know, do you tell them to do practice interviews? What do you generally coach people to do?
We coach them a lot when we're working with them, either as a candidate or a coaching client, because the video interview can either make it or break it for you. And now video interviews have become the norm, and very few people have experience to really do those well. Everything from, and I know I commented on your amazing background, to some people having clutter, to some people having animals jump up on the desk in front of them. But it all comes down to, you've got to do your research, both on how to do an interview well and on the organization, on the position. You've got to make sure that you can highlight in your background what they want to hear, but you also have to practice a video interview. You have to make sure that you can connect to the platform they're using, that your bandwidth is enough that it's not going to hang up. And these things are so important. And as you and I were talking about, first impressions. And if you're late because you couldn't get your video working and you're in technology, that speaks volumes. So you really want to practice with somebody, record yourself, look at it, look for tells, look for, ticks, look for your background. Preparation is absolutely the key to success for video interviews.
I think on average, when I've gone to a CIO series of interviews, generally it's over 2 visits, and there are, I don't know, anytime you travel to the location, there's probably at least, I think the minimum I've spoken to is about 6, but generally you're talking to a fair number of people every time you visit. I mean, is there a different approach if you're talking to a CFO versus a CEO versus a president in charge of the physician group? And I mean, or are you trying to just communicate the same thing as you get in front of those different constituents?
Absolutely not. A CFO is going to have very different interests in what you can do for him or her versus the CMO or somebody else. So you want to tailor what you can do to give examples of how you've been successful dealing with concerns the CFO has, or concerns the CMO has, or concerns the CNO has. Tailor success factors and be able to tell stories. This is really about engaging and being able to tell a story about how you solved a problem. Because, organizations interview, they're looking for somebody to solve that problem, as I mentioned earlier. And the best indicator of whether you can solve a problem is how you've solved them in the past. So think through how to tell stories.
Yeah, that's one of my friends always says, the past performance is the best indicator of future results. So, but I love the fact that you're talking about telling a story. This is one of the things that not in the interview process is so important, to be able to tell a story, to creatively demonstrate what you've done. But it's also a skill that I'm talking to CIOs about. So I coach CIOs, and one of the things we talk about is, the ability to tell a story around whatever the next initiative is. In order to get funding, you have to be able to articulate, and generally what we've done before is we've gone in and said, hey, there's this problem. Here's our solution. Here's what we're going to do. And that's not as effective as saying, hey, look, let me tell you the story of this patient, and this patient, blah, 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 and they ran into this challenge. here's how this would have looked if we had put something like this in place. We respond to stories so much better than bullet points, I think. And and so when we're getting ready for interviews, we've got to be able to really package up who we are in a good set of stories. Any mistakes that people make in interviews?
Oh, the number is so great.
Okay. Should I just tell my stories of the mistakes I've made in interviews?
I think the number one mistake, Bill, that I hear is people not being succinct. And somebody will say, "Tell me about your career." And what you want to do is you had that elevator pitch. You want to be able to tell a very short elevator pitch in about 2 minutes. We've had people who've rambled on for 15 minutes, starting back when they were born in a log cabin, in Illinois, rather than being able to articulate the value of what their career has gotten them to this point that'll benefit the organization. Because the organization is looking for the benefit you're going to bring, and you've got to be able to articulate that benefit, as we talked about, through stories. And you can normally figure out what questions are going to be asked. You've interviewed enough people, you've been interviewed enough over your career. You can prepare by thinking through, what would I ask me if I were interviewing me for this position? And then think about the stories that you want to tell along those lines. That's the key part.
Yeah, and you're my best friend. If you're the executive search firm that's bringing me in, you're my best friend, because you're gonna say, hey, look, here are the people you're interviewing with. The reason they're going out to search is because they're replacing a 20-year CIO, or they're replacing somebody who had to move on because of a challenge that they were facing. I mean, you're gonna give me all sorts of clues. I mean, you want me to be successful in the interview, so you're gonna coach me as I go in. And I assume that people really take advantage of that going into those interviews.
Absolutely, they do. And, we want to help you be the best you can be during that interview. But it's amazing. You get into this interview and you get nervous because you haven't done it. And everything that we have suggested you do sort of goes out the window. And we were doing a CIO search for Sharp, and we got to sit in on all the first rounds of interviews. And it was amazing to really sit in and watch these. And this was just, in January. So it was really amazing to sit in and watch and see where we had coached people, where they'd listened, and where we should have coached them more because of what came out, during the interviews. So I think it's just really listening and helping individuals be the best they can be.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I mean, you talked about video. What else has changed during the pandemic in terms of this process?
We have had at least 8 individuals who have accepted positions and relocated or taken virtual jobs for now, who have never met anybody in the organization, never seen it face to face. And we had one, we were doing the chief privacy officer for Geisinger, and the individual had never been to Danville, bought a house, and moved there totally virtually through real estate tours and everything else. So that's entirely a new paradigm that we have not had to address before. And it's tough.
Interesting. Have the requirements changed of what people are looking for in leaders as a result of the pandemic?
No, but they're being more cautious in hiring. I think a lot of the financials have to do with it. I think knowing that they can't make a mistake or don't want to make a mistake now, it's too important. So I think they're more cautious, and I think individuals are more cautious. But with that being said, you're seeing a lot more people who are applying for positions now than we've seen in a long time.
Really? That's surprising to me. I mean, do you have speculation as to why that is?
There are a lot of people who have been furloughed or lost their job. We're doing one right now where we're looking for a senior director of analytics. And we've had people from outside the industry, people from high levels in banking, VPs of huge organizations who've lost their job and are coming and saying, I want this. And it's, why do you want this? And they give some reason, but it's really because they're without a job. So it's it's a crazy environment out there, or they're afraid they're going to lose their job with downsizing and mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, and I think we've seen we keep seeing mergers. Cone Health and Centera just came together. I've spoken to healthcare leaders, and I've gone through the process, as I've said. Sometimes there's things that we sort of sit back and go, "What is going?" So long pauses in between the interview and the time you hear back. I mean, what's typically happening during those pauses?
A lot of times we have a final interview going on, and the organization, for the three candidates who are interviewing, gave us a 4-week period over which those interviews are going to take place. So if you're first, you're waiting a long time to get in. And then we try to really counsel the organization. The minute we start, we say we want the times for the first interviews, the second interviews, and meetings on the decision to be scheduled on your calendar. Sometimes they're really good and listen to us. Other times they say, well, we'll do it as we get along. Academics, as you can imagine, are the worst, trying to get people on calendars. And then a lot of times they'll have to reschedule because something more important comes up or something they perceive as more important comes up. So organizations really take a long time. We try to keep people informed as best we can, but sometimes it's very embarrassing for us and we feel badly when we're saying we're not hearing back from the organization on which way they want to go. And we can't do anything to hurry them up. We try. Sometimes they just take too long.
So, and this might be just a specific challenge that I had. So, when I left St. Joe's, I did an interview for a job. I ended up coming in second, which is there's no runaround prize. You don't get a check. You don't get anything. But it was interesting in the interview process because there was this long extended period, and it was kind of interesting. And then I heard through the grapevine essentially that they were offering the job to somebody else. And so I called the recruiter and I said, are they just keeping me on the hook in case the negotiations don't go well? And you could tell I sort of caught him off guard. And, if you're well connected in the industry, you can find things like this out. And he just said, yeah, that's exactly what's going on right now. I mean, is that a normal process that they have like a backup candidate that they're not communicating with so that they can try to get their primary candidate closed before they move on?
Absolutely. And we will say, are you ready for us to let this person know they're no longer in consideration? And sometimes they'll say, yes, we are. And other times they'll say, no, let's just keep them, in our back pocket in case these negotiations don't go well. So yes, that is common to do. And again, we're trying to do what our client wants, but trying to be as transparent and informative to the candidates as we are allowed to be.
And I think that's one of the things that people mistake. Your client is the health system. They're the ones who are paying you. They're the ones. And so you get such a close relationship with the candidate. I think sometimes that they feel like you're representing them. And in some ways you do represent them, but you work for the health system.
Exactly. And it's tough, but we try to, again, be as transparent and honest with everyone as we can through the process. And we have one client where we're scheduled to do a presentation of candidates at the end of next week. And we called them last Friday and said, we've got an amazing individual who's interviewing elsewhere. We'd like to go outside our norm of presenting this slate and present this person early so that you can at least talk to them. So that's where we do represent candidates a little differently and sort of push the client because we feel this individual would be amazing on their team.
One of the questions I ask just is around female leaders. So is there any special words for female leaders in health IT who are aspiring to executive roles?
When a position is open, there's been a study that men will apply for it if they meet about 50% of the criteria. Women wait to apply for it until they reach virtually 100%. They want to make sure they can do the job, where I think they may be a little less risk adverse, where males are, I can do this, I've got 50% of the skills. So I think I would counsel them to really look at where you are applying. And are there positions that might be a stretch, but you could really sell your ability to go in there and be successful. I think that would be my primary counsel for them. But I think women are doing a better job of taking, going to Chime Boot Camp and getting master's degrees and really deciding where they want to go and how to get there and then doing it. So hopefully they'll continue along that path.
Yeah, I have a coaching client that is a female executive in a health tech startup, and and she's not at the CEO or CIO level. She's one step below that, and it's been eye opening for me to just hear the stories and to hear what she faces, just in terms of just challenges that I might be ignorant of them. I just didn't recognize they existed. Everything from essentially being the only woman in a room full of engineers and technicians, which has its own challenges, to not being potentially not feeling like they're ready for the next role. I mean, I think I've told her like half dozen times, she's ready for the next role. She's got all the skills. Let's say it this way. She has as many skills as everybody else is going to apply for whatever the next role is. And you just have to take that step.
And it's confidence. And it's, building your confidence and looking around and saying, yeah, I can do that too. Because I think, again, as I said, I think sometimes women are more reluctant to step up and say what they think and, have that fear of being rejected. But you have to be rejected along the way to get to where you want to be. So just keep plugging away and keep going for those positions. And I think, we're seeing more and more female CIOs. We're seeing more and more female CEOs. So I'm really happy that we're making progress. We still have a lot of progress to make, but we're getting there.
Actually, I'm going to ask you like what services and how people can contact you, but I wanted to hit on cybersecurity real quick. I mean, what are you seeing in cybersecurity right now? Is there still not as big of a pool of candidates as we would like?
There's a good pool of candidates, but a lot of them are outside of healthcare because healthcare has been so late to the game in cybersecurity. We joke that before the, EHR in 2009, 2010, security was locking the doors in the filing cabinets when you left at night because who cared about scheduling systems? But so they're late to the game, and those outside of technology or healthcare technology are too expensive to come in for the most part. And you're losing a lot of the ones from healthcare who are trained who can go elsewhere and make more money. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And I think also healthcare is not sure where this position should report or what it should be like. And it's very different across organizations.
That's fascinating. So we should maybe adjust our expectations of what we're going to pay for a high-end chief information security officer or chief security officer for a health system. And we really need to think of how they report into the organization. I know that our chief information security officer and chief security officer did not report to me as the CIO. And that was my doing, by the way. When I came in, it did report to me and I broke it out, and we hired a phenomenal chief security officer. And I think part of it was, they got to do presentations directly to the board. They, and we worked very closely together, but they were on par with the CIO within the organization. And given the visibility of security, that still feels right to me. Is that what you're seeing?
Not enough. And a lot of people who want to come into healthcare from outside are looking at that reporting structure. But I think, again, it's the level of the position. And organizations, they say, well, we look at parity internally and we can't pay a person that much because of the level they are. And all I can say to them is, look at what it will cost you with a breach. Look at what it will cost you from your patient, feeling about your organization, your image. But yet healthcare still doesn't see how important it is.
Yeah, and I think that's good. It's just going to continue to evolve. What kind of services, what kind of things are you offering at this point? You're helping people with their resume, you're helping people with interviews, you're doing, I mean, what services are you guys doing?
Well, we've started a whole coaching series. to help people with their career, everything from, sort of talking about what do you want to be when you grow up and really looking at where those gaps are in skills to get you to where you want to be, to interviewing, to salary negotiation, to resume writing, just anything along the line. We had somebody who called us and said, I've got an interview. I need to do interviewing. Can you do it? So we were able to fit him in that week because he really needed it to move ahead. He hadn't interviewed quite some time. So we do offer that full range of services. And that's come about in just a very short time because we felt the need for it, that there is such a gap between what a person has and how they're able to present that. Yeah.
And I almost say that, you were talking about health systems looking at the cybersecurity roles and reevaluating what it's worth. I had my resume rewritten all those years ago and a couple times since then. I think it's like a couple $100 for me to have somebody rewrite it. And in the scheme of things, when you look at what an annual salary is, that was really nothing. And to have coaching on an interview is invaluable if you get the role, right? I mean, these are the investments we make in ourselves. And, to an individual who's out of work, it might feel like, hey, $1,000 or so is a lot, but if it helps you to land that job, it really is one of those, MasterCard moments where it's priceless.
I think it all comes down to, Bill, building their confidence and getting them to think of the value they bring. All too often, we know we're good at what we do, but we don't realize how good we are. And if somebody helps you pull out and you look and say, yeah, I am really good at that, that translates into the resume. It translates into the interview. It translates into how you present yourself.
Well, Judy, we've been trying to do this podcast since I started, and this is episode like 293. So I am so glad we finally made this happen.
It has taken a while, and I'm surprised why. The time has just never been right. So I really appreciate your tenacity on this.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on. We will have to make it a more regular occurrence. I will continue to hound you via email and other ways, and we'll do this again next year.
Please do. I look forward to it, Bill.
That's one of the things I miss about not having conferences. It's running into those people in the industry that you just haven't seen in a while that you just love catching up with. I really appreciate Judy and the work that she does and the friendship that we've been able to strike up over the years. That's all for this week. Don't forget to sign up for Clip Notes, send an email, hit the website. We want to help to make your system and your team more productive. Special thanks to our sponsors, VMware, Starburst Advisors, Galen Healthcare, Health Lyrics, Sirius Healthcare, Pro Talent Advisors, and our newest channel sponsor, Health Next, for choosing to invest in developing the next generation of health leaders. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, check out our website, thisweekhealth.com, or the YouTube channel as well. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is share it with a peer. Send an email, let them know however you let them know that you're getting value out of the show. Please check back every Tuesday for news, Wednesday and Friday for industry influencer interviews like this one. And we will continue to drop those shows for the foreseeable future. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.